Hi everyone, welcome to this series of videos where we will be interviewing various people who either have mental illness or advocate for mental health. Just to introduce myself, my name is Katrina. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder about 14 years ago. I've dealt with the ups and the downs and everything in between. Dealt with the stigma that's associated with it. Because of that, this is the main reason why I wanted to do these interviews to try and hopefully destigmatize mental illness and normalize conversations about mental health. These interviews will hopefully show everyone that you're not alone, that it's okay to speak up about it and talk about mental health, and hopefully it'll break the stigma and so that future generations don't have to deal with the fear and the guilt and the shame that's associated with it. So today we have a special guest. Her name is Christine. Thanks for meeting with us today. But before we proceed, I just wanted to introduce my co-host, Kat.
Thank you, Katrina. Hi, everyone. My name is also Katrina, but I go by Kat. And so just a little bit about me. I'm currently a second-year psychology student at UC Davis, University of California, Davis. And just a little backstory is throughout my whole college career, I have been a nutrition science major. And it wasn't until I actually attended therapy in college after kind of like ignoring or suppressing it for my entire life, and also just from the cultural and family barriers, coming from an immigrant family and household, mental health was just seen as very taboo and only for like the weak-minded, and so there was just a lot of stigma around it, which is why I never made that first step to go to therapy. But honestly, it's been such a life-changing experience that it's become my passion, just like the mental health work in general. And it's what I want to like dedicate my work to. So that's also why I'm here doing these interviews, to help normalize and destigmatize mental health issues and mental illness, because mental health is universal. So I'm so excited to be here to interview Christine, so we can ask her to introduce herself and her journey that got her passionate about mental health, if so.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kat. So my name is Christine. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm on Treaty 6 territory in Alberta, Canada. So with my little journey of mental health, I'm kind of the same as you, Kat. I kind of started to get involved with mental health once I actually started at uni. And so that was a weird experience. Never talked about it at home. It was taboo. And then, I slowly got diagnosed with a few mental health things. So it's been definitely a little journey for me. I'm only in my second year of uni, so a new program I'm starting this year. So it's definitely been a whirlwind of a roller coaster, but we're here, so we're thriving.
Yeah. Thank you again for meeting with us. I know you mentioned before that you were diagnosed with anxiety disorder. Did you want to elaborate on that as well?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, I've always had anxiety while growing up. I was always I think with anxiety and anxiety disorder, it's like I always had these questions in my brain, like 24/7 of like, oh my God, are they looking at me? Or am I doing this right? Or does my hair look wrong? Or, just that perfectionist kind of mentality was in my brain all the time. And so it just got to the point that I thought it was normal, honestly, because my mom had the same issues, but she never, got help for mental health. That wasn't discussed. So basically, I started realizing I got more panic attacks while in high school. And so I was like, okay, maybe this isn't right. But again, didn't want to deal with it because it's like, no, that's not my problem. I was focused on playing soccer. That was it. So I did not want to deal with anything else. And then once I got into uni, 2 years ago, I guess, basically I was like, okay, I couldn't even walk to class because of my panic attacks. I had it so bad that I was going to the bathroom every 5 minutes, no joke. It was that repetitive in the day. And I was like, maybe this is really not it. Maybe I do need to go for some help. And so, it just was a hell of a time. I even tried to go to the gym to try to, deal with your anxiety, as people are told to just go work out. I tried that little fun thing. No, I got a bunch of shakes. I had panic attacks in the gym. It was a hell of a time. So then, finally decided to go get help, and so decided to talk to a psychologist and kind of saw that, oh, okay, this isn't normal. And then I got diagnosed with anxiety disorder. So yeah, it's definitely been a fun time. But yeah, we're getting through it.
Yeah, it definitely helps to put a name to it, right? I mean, before you kind of just think, well, is this normal? What's going on? Is anything, different about me? But then when you have the name put to it, it does kind of clear things up, and at least now you can figure out what to do with it. So that definitely helps. And yeah, I can definitely relate to the whole going to the bathroom every 5 minutes. I've suffered through that too, especially during work. I do that a lot. I kind of just try to meditate, and the bathroom is a quiet place to do that. So, it's a, I don't know if it's a bad thing per se. So, if it helps you,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a good way to deal with it, especially if you try and, calm yourself down in the bathroom,
Mhm.
then hopefully it'll help you. But yeah, so thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. I agree too, like with the whole names thing. Sometimes it does benefit people to have a name or some sort of label to put on it so they kind of know exactly like what Katrina said, how to handle it, how to deal with the side effects that comes with it. However, sometimes labels can be also confining or restricting, like it's like put in a box. And I feel like this can apply in a lot of social factors too. But honestly, I feel like the utilization of labels and names in general, the whole idea of language with mental health, if it helps you, then go with it. If it's counterproductive and it doesn't help you and you feel restricted, then it's okay. Like I feel like another thing with mental health is that either you're like you have it or you don't, and people just don't take into account the gray area like high functioning anxiety or like all these, like there's so many different names, like it's also a spectrum. um, and I think that's really important to for people to like understand, because it can be a misconception, like either you're diagnosed and so you need help, or you're not diagnosed so you don't need help. But really, mental health is universal and everyone needs help one way or the other.
That's a
So
great point. Yeah, that's a great point to make, Kat. Yeah, there's always that gray area that nobody really thinks about because, people either say, oh, yes, you're diagnosed with this or you're not
yeah.
diagnosed with that. But there is that gray area, like even for depression, there's such thing as moderate depression. And
Hmm.
sometimes you don't even realize that you have it because it's moderate and it's not
Yes.
severe. So
Hmm.
yeah, there is that gray area, and it's a great point to make. So thank you for saying that. Um, Christine, did you have any special or specific interests regarding the scope of mental health? And if so, what are they?
Wow, that is a broad question. I think I'd say honestly anything because like I've dealt with a lot with, as I said, anxiety disorder, also getting diagnosed with ADHD. As an adult, it was like a whoa, like, and realizing I didn't know the statistics of women being with ADHD and how that is so different compared to men. And again, that's just a really interesting thing that like you don't realize until you're like getting thrown into these difficulties that I was facing in school. And so honestly, like I've been really big with anxiety. Depression is another one. Honestly, like just the whole realm of it, because it's like everyone faces it in some way or the other. And it might be your loved one that's dealing with it, or your own self. And I was finding at like a young age, it's like I was struggling with so much that I just did not want to even like cope with, like I wanted it to get away, and obviously it wasn't. So it kind of made me realize like, okay, maybe I need to kind of just generally, focus on any area I can whenever I can, type of thing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's a good way to look at it. Really, it's a good attitude. Um, yeah, I mean, it is a broad question, and there's so many aspects to mental health that you can go into. It's so
Yeah.
broad, and yeah, I mean, really, it's like it's tough because even for me, because I suffer from mental illness. Like we were talking about before, I try not to, um, you know, confine myself into that, but at the same time, it is nice to put a label to it. So um, basically, I don't know. I mean, you can go in any direction really with mental health, and I think that it's great that you're getting involved with it because we need more people to be involved. So I commend you for that.
Actually,
Yes,
thank
it's
you. No, I
great.
totally agree.
And also, I was just wondering, since it seems like you've done the research, I was just wondering what is the statistics of women having ADHD versus men who have ADHD? Do you know? I
I
was
don't
just
know the
curious.
exact numbers, but I
Yeah.
know that when, I think the only thing that did stick with me was like boys are able to be detected by the age of 5,
Hmm.
while girls are usually detected like 16 or later. And so
Hmm.
that was the first thing that I was like, damn, okay, like this was something that was always bugging me growing up because I think
Yeah.
a lot of people thought I was told I was like hypochondriac and like just like told that I always need a label for everything and that I'm overreacting with everything. So that kind of made me think like, oh, maybe like I think girls are told that. And I'm not saying guys aren't. It's just it seems like for girls it's like especially right now it seems like people are a lot more sensitive when it's like women are having difficulties and it's like people are trying to talk, people are trying to open up and it's like we keep getting shut down because like it's just not the normal. And so I think people are taken back. And I think there's actually something in psychology that you probably know, Kat.
Hmm.
There's something surrounding like how people don't like when people go against the grain and go a different way. And so it kind of makes people back away because they're not used to someone doing something different out of the typical like realm. And so
Yeah.
I think that was a huge thing for me because it's like looking at ADHD, it's like I never thought I would have it. Like it was like, oh, that's taboo, like it was like,
Yeah.
no, you have an issue if you have that. And then
Yeah.
it's like once my mom like finally realized and like actually tried to, how do I put it, she tried to understand where I was coming from because she has the same thing but she's never been diagnosed. And so
Wow.
it's like she never wants to, and that's okay,
Hmm.
like that's her own choice. But I
Hmm.
was like stuck finding myself like in school struggling so bad and I was like, am I this mad stupid or is there something up? And so yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I've been trying to, I'm also a disability rights advocate. So I've just been trying to educate myself on autism and ADHD, neurodivergent
Mhm.
people. So it's just super interesting for me. um, but yeah. So, Christine, the next question we have for you is what are you currently doing or what do you want to do to spread awareness on mental
Okay, I like this question because I was already telling Catherine actually some of it today. So I don't know what you would call it, but I'm kind of creating like a nonprofit campaign. It's called the Tin a Day, and so basically I'm a huge environmental nerd as well. So basically what I've done is getting tins that are gonna usually end up in the landfill, and so I reuse them to put self-care products in that are usually expensive. And like the reason for that is because like I come from a family that's quite like lower income, like kind of poor kind of spectrum. So it was really difficult to get stuff and things that I wanted. So for example, I'm a big believer in natural, plants and like what Mother Nature gave us. So like lavender oil is something I really do swear by because it does help. Like it might, I think people expect things to happen like this because we're so caught up in this go 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 mentality. But honestly, like using these things and actually appreciating it really shows like the effect it has on you. And so I started putting products in the tins like that. And then I created a QR code inside of the tins that direct you to mental health. And so, yeah, that's been my little adventure so far of creating a tin a day and just trying to, make that difference that like I work 2 jobs. And so the jobs I'm working in is dealing with youth and dealing with employment sectors. And so like I work with YMCA and I work with CCYP, which is Canadian Council Youth Prosperity. And so they're both really focused on, changing things and making it all equal for everyone. And so just having discussions with people and design jams, it was like I had like individuals tell me like they're dealing with like trigger warning here, but suicide. And it was like people were that like forthcoming to tell me that as a stranger that was just presenting. And I was like taken aback because I'm like, I've been stuck in that before. So it's like seeing that in real times right now, even with the pandemic, it's like there really needs to be something happening because, obviously businesses are closing down and also governments aren't really focusing in that department. There's more focus for obviously um, like the vaccines, which is understandable, but there's also that hit of like, why are we putting more money to oil or something that's just not exactly it for right now? And so I think with the QR code, especially, I was thinking of accessibility, because I think people who don't have computers, they still can go to a library and get that scanned. And there still is ways to wrap around using that QR code if you don't have that technology at hand. And I think that's a huge thing as well that mental health doesn't really focus on, like accessibility. Like there's such a huge issue of, if you can't afford it, or if you're in a home, it's like you might not be able to afford it, or the connections are off. Like, you know how Zoom is, like sometimes there's really bad connection. So that's kind of my goal. I know I kind of went on a little tangent, but that's a little bit about what I'm doing.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you're doing so many, like a huge range of things that you got going on there. The nonprofit, that's a great idea.
Yes.
I really love that. And I love the whole natural aspect of it as well, the environmentally friendly aspect. And being able to use that to link or kind of connect people with, mental health resources and things like that. So, and also the work that you're doing, that's really wonderful. And it really does show you what an impact you can make. I mean, the fact that that person came up to you and, basically, confided with you with that information, I mean, I think that's already a step forward, because someone is actually talking about it, and it's not really as afraid to open up about it. So I'm really glad that you're doing that type of work. I would love to get involved with something like that as well. So yeah, so that's great, really great.
Honestly, yeah, a lot of your work I feel like are things that are pushed under the rug or not talked about. Especially, I'm so with you on the, yes, people understand that there's a lot of mental health resources out there, but to be accessible towards it is just, again, that gray area that like people don't really see or understand, like even like navigating through insurance, or like having
Oh my
that
gosh, yes. That is
accessibility.
something you just hit the nail on. Like, oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a thing that we gotta work on right now, and it's great that the type of work that you're doing is going towards that, because that's what the world kind of needs more of. And it's very, like as Katrina said, I'm kind of a soundboard. I'm echoing what everyone is saying, but like it's commendable that you're doing this work. So amazing.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And it's very innovative too. I would
Oh
never have
yeah,
thought
yeah.
to do something like that, where you would provide those resources just through a product. It's like killing two birds with one stone, essentially.
Yeah,
You're
no, that was
providing a
the
product
mentality.
and also something that's useful, and helping with
Yes.
accessibility. So
And
yeah,
also
it's great.
helps with the environmental sector, like helps the environment and being like eco-friendly, along with tackling accessibility and also being creative. Like
Right.
it's really good.
So much,
Thank
so many
you.
facets to it. I guess our next question would be, what are some things you wish people knew about mental health?
I think you guys have hit the nail already on it, but like just talking about those spectrums, like it really does range. And I think one thing I had a difficulty with a barrier while dealing with my anxiety, at least, was like, you don't look like you're anxious, because if you can't tell, I'm a talkative person. So like people aren't going to think I have anxiety, and I've been told that, because it's just, I don't give off that, I guess, the typical stigma persona of it. So it's like, that's been something that's been a big barrier, because it's like, oh, well, you don't look like you would have anxiety, or you don't sound, or you don't seem like you would. And it's like, how can you define that? Like, it's such a difficult thing to be like, you look like you have anxiety. It's like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, I want to know, because it's like, that's within any type of mental health. And it's like, even with, um, again, like trigger warning, but like my eating disorder that I'm dealing with, that's something that's like, you don't look like you lost weight. That's something that people say. And it's like, I don't know how you can, like, you can't say no, you didn't, if you feel your clothes are falling off, or if you like, there's so many signs that people don't take into context really whenever they're talking to someone with an eating disorder, let's say. And it's like, I think that's another area that's a really big barrier, is like, eating disorders. Like, that's something that people don't understand. Like, you know, you're not gonna maybe look like you lost a bunch of weight, but you know, because you have clothes, or you know, because you're your own person, right? Like, you literally only know yourself the best. So I think people sometimes kind of miss that mark on it. But I think for mental health in general, I think telling people, like, there really is never, you're never too late to really go get help. Like, it really sounds so cheesy, but like, I definitely thought, like, okay, you know, I'm gonna suck it up like my family does, and like, you know, that was the only way I knew. So it was like, okay, I'm gonna do that. I also didn't want to be the odd one out. You know, I already was kind of doing, just kind of, my personality was very out there, so I didn't really want to stick out more. And so basically, like, really, it's just not too late to go talk to someone. And again, I think it's funny to see how many people really do understand each other when there's actually a conversation of mental health, and how much you can really, I think the other thing is too, is just we need to destigmatize but decolonize the whole mentality of mental health, and just having conversations with people, because I think that's something that um, has really been an issue. And I know personally in Canada, and I know in the US with a few of my friends from there, it's like there's this issue of, like, we need to be individualistic, but we shouldn't be collective in our mindsets in any way. And it's like, why? Like, why can't we have this connection with people and not having to compare or having to do better than another person? Like, we shouldn't have to compete. There's no reason. And I think we're stuck in that right now, because it's like, you're seeing people get really ugly with this whole pandemic, and with a lot of racism involved. And again, it's already been happening. Like, we already know that. And it's like, people kind of took the blind eye to that and just, you know, ignored it. And now it's like, boom, now it's popularized. So now we need to focus on it. And I think, like, those two parts are a big thing that needs to be really taken out. Like, we need to really work on decolonizing stuff. We really need to work on, like, being part of a community, rather than just like needing to do our own thing and that's it. We don't care if someone else dies or anything. And it's like, it sickens me, honestly. Like, is seeing it on the news, and in my life personally, it's like seeing it a lot. It's like, damn, like, how are we gonna like take this all apart? Because it's a lot to do. And obviously not one person can do it. So
Yeah, definitely. It's really important for everyone to come together as a community, like you said. And it's, I never would have thought of it like that, because you know, we're so used to doing things on our own, especially with mental health, because we're so afraid to say anything to anybody else. We try to keep things internally, and because of that, we do internalize things and try to deal with it on our own. But it doesn't, it can't work that way. You know, you have to get involved with other people, make sure that you support other people and they support you. It's a team effort. And yeah, that's very true. And I hope people will take that from this interview, and, you know, and
Yes.
try and use that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
you touched on a lot of things that I have a lot to say about, like, because I resonate with it, right? So seeking support is really it's a testimony to your strength, because that's hard to do. And so, like, having that support and feeling safe with that support stems from solidarity. But how can we achieve that solidarity? It's through, like, understanding people and decolonizing, like what you said, decolonizing mental health, and breaking even the stigmas and barriers that mental health, like, services can only be for, or like they're only for privileged people, or like that doesn't pertain to our culture or whatever. Like, there's so many cultural barriers that I've faced in my personal life too, with my family, that they think, like, mental health or therapy is just not, it's just out of the picture. It doesn't apply to us, when really it's, and then it relates to that whole thing about, like, are we going to be collective about this, or are we going to be individualistic about this? And the ties between, you know, like, mental health with human rights is, like, I personally see that there's a great intersection with that, because a lot, like, these systems of oppression, as what we see on the news, like, it very much affects our daily lives, to the point where it comes into factors of, like, our mental health. And it's super important to touch base on. And I don't think a lot of people are talking about it which is why you bring up such great points. And it's true. Like we gotta be collective and heal together. so, so actually, since before we pursue on to the other questions, since you said, you know, you've dealt with multiple things like anxiety, depression, ADHD, have you been affected by the stigma in any way? And if so, how did you handle it?
Definitely. That's definitely. I think with school, it really impacted me because I felt like I was really stupid because of my marks. And again, you know, that's with the whole colonized education system we are all brought up on, with marks deeming really our, like, how smart we are. And it's like, it makes no sense to me because it's like now I'm in uni and it's like, oh, I got 100 on a paper or something. But again, like it doesn't mean I'm stupid, and it doesn't mean I'm always smart if I'm getting those marks. It's like really having to deal with that a lot, and having teachers really downplay my achievements, and in a way really just affect like how I would get educated, because I did have teachers who like I spoke out a lot about things that really impacted like education and individuals in school, and it was like no one really would stand up with me, which was, you know, I think people are too you know, with their privilege or with just, you know, being, they don't want to be put on the spot. And I think that's a big thing with people, because they just don't want that. And I think that was something that I kind of found that was really a big difficulty, because I kind of felt alone sometimes with that kind of fight. And like the other thing is just, as I said, like the stigma in my family, like I would just kind of, it'd be like very like, I guess you could say they were microaggressions in a way, because it was very much like, it would be a joke, but it wasn't. And it was very much like played into a joke, but you know, deep down it wasn't. And it was a very common thing in my household, because ironically, I was the only one getting help. And like, I was the only one, you know, talking about how much issues I had, because I did have a lot of issues. And, you know, everyone else seemed like they were perfectly content. And it was like, no, like, no one is. It's just, you know, people love faking it till you make it. And, you know, sometimes that really dies out. And it was dying out for me. So that's definitely been just a big stigma of just like, you know, letting my family know, like, hey, I'm struggling, and maybe you should get help too. You know, like, it's never, literally never too late. So I think those have been like kind of like a little bit of the difficulties. But yeah.
Yeah, but that whole fake it till you make it thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's so overdone. I think that it's overrated. And to be honest, I think that we just need to be honest with ourselves and really just kind of, I don't know if embrace is the right word, but just in a way, you're kind of embracing your true self and just, you know, be honest about it. Faking it is not going to get you anywhere, to be honest. And I think that that whole phrase is just completely overdone. And the stigma with the family, I totally hear you on that. Sometimes the joke, I mean, there's always some truth in a joke. And unfortunately, you know, sometimes it just comes off the wrong way. And, you know, it's not nice to hear those things. You know, it's never nice. But yeah, the stigma, I mean, I've dealt with it even at work too. Every time I hear, you know, someone, you know, if someone's behaving erratically or changing back and forth, they joke and say, oh, they're being bipolar. And, you know, it's like, come on, you don't really understand what that means. And I know it's a joke, but, you know, it can be a little offensive sometimes. And so I totally hear you on the whole joke thing, microaggressions.
Absolutely. I think a big thing from my personal experience that I can relate to both of you is, like, in my family, when I talk about, you know, like mental health things or going to therapy, it's often seen that those, like, they categorize these types of people as being too weak or too sensitive. Like, stop being too sensitive. That's something I hear all the time. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. That makes me feel good about myself. But really, it's a matter of, I think what Katrina said, being honest with yourself, not embracing it, but I think just acceptance that this is who I am, and that's okay. Like, yes. Accept it or not, I accept myself. Like, yeah, it's super important. You don't need to fake it. You don't need to fake anything. Yeah.
Our next question is there anything that you currently do that helps your mental health, like self-care routines, habits, any practices?
I think a big one for me is I play guitar. I write my own music type of thing. Kind of like you, Katrina, I like writing poetry and it turns into music for me basically. So yeah, that's a really big thing for me. I think it's really helped me alleviate the kind of stress. And I think even before getting diagnosed with anxiety disorder, I started playing guitar every time I was anxious when I would like get to my dorm. And so it was just a really good coping mechanism because it's like, you know, you're getting your mind off of something. Just like, you know, I used to take like a sour candy every time I had a panic attack because it just made me like really like completely zone out because it's like something sour in my mouth. So that's another trick if any of you guys are curious with a panic attack next time. It definitely works. But yeah, I think that was one of my coping. I think another one is meditating, really big time. Like just really, I really with like the motherland, I really do appreciate smudging. And so that's a really beautiful like spiritual thing that have learned from like the traditional teachings here on Treaty 6. So it's been really lovely with that, and also just, you know, using incense. And as I said, like lavender is really something that does work really well for me. So I'd say those are a few things. And I think even just like, I don't know if I'd call this self-care, but I like love doing like, I've done a few presentations and summits that I've spoke at for mental health. So that's another thing that just really helps. And I think kind of just makes me feel like, okay, you know, maybe someone will feel a little bit better today with their mental health because I spoke. So yeah, it's just a few things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely relate to the speaking part of it. I think ever since I started, you know, doing things like this to advocate for mental health, but whether it's through these interviews or through this other organization that I'm involved with, it does help with maintenance of your mental health. Somehow, somewhere or other, it just kind of helps you, helps keep you accountable in a way because, you know, you're kind of helping others with their mental health, and in a way because of that you're helping yourself. So yeah, that's a great point that you made, because other people can take that with them, because I think that there are other things that you can look into to help with your mental health, other than just the typical self-care routines. But yes, that's a really great tip with the sour candy. uh, I think that it goes in line with using your senses. I know it's one of the tricks that I learned through therapy that, you know, if you utilize your five senses, it helps to ground you and keep you mindful of the present. And so that's a great tip. I'll probably take that with me. So
Awesome.
great.
Good to know. Yeah, I knew someone as well, like who it would help her when she would like suck on a lemon. So that kind of similar thing. And but yeah, I think I'm with you on the writing thing. I love songwriting myself. I have a ukulele, so I always just love writing
Oh
songs.
my God.
Yeah, I actually started off with the guitar. But yeah, I like playing ukulele. It's just better on my small hands. But that along with yeah, nature is so healing. And with smudging too, I like earthing, like grounding yourself, like planting your feet like on the ground. It helps recenter yourself. Meditating, as what you said, and really yeah, those are great practices, I think. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. So for being accountable with your mental health, like that's what I started a blog this year about mental health to kind of keep me accountable for my well-being, but just knowing to like provide kind of more like open dialogue and discussion and conversation about mental health things, I think. And like it's kind of like an act of service you're doing out to the world, which makes you feel better because it's like, hey, I'm doing something. I'm making an impact somehow in the best way I can, even though this world is huge and I'm so small. It kind of makes you feel better. So yeah,
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, working towards a cause, I think, is what helps people, I think, feel better about themselves, but also because they're helping others. So it's a very natural way to make yourself feel better, right? So
right, and it's a
yeah,
healthy way too, because it's like
it's a healthy way,
Best
a
of both
beneficial
worlds.
way for everyone. So
beneficial way.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
forward.
Okay, so The last question we actually have for you, Christine, now is, what's the best advice that you have for anyone who's currently struggling with mental health?
I think something would be along the lines of start small. I think grasping at anything that you think can help your mental health is a great start. Because I think my mentality when I first was realizing I need to figure out focus on my mental health, it was okay, I need to do everything all at once. I need to go get a therapist. I need to get a psychologist. I need to do everything I can to just make myself better. And it's sadly that's not how it works. We go through a lot of different little barriers, and as I said, it's your life is usually a roller coaster. It doesn't matter who you are, it's usually not going to be straight. So I think a big thing was just, taking little by little. So if you maybe read a book that day and, you were proud of yourself for maybe just not going on your phone for comparing yourself on Instagram, or, again, just literally painting your nails, or just doing some simple things, really just you see the impact once you start doing it more. And I think, leaning on the small little achievements really do create that big impact, just mental health activism, because I think once you do small little things, it really does start to add up, and I think you kind of start to create something bigger than you even expected, because again, small achievements really do make a huge difference.
Yeah, right. It's that snowball effect where you start with small things and it just accumulates and accumulates, and eventually it becomes something bigger than you. You're right. That's a great advice. I think that's a good takeaway for people, because sometimes people are kind of focused on trying to get rid of a problem as a whole, but sometimes you just have to start small, take baby steps, and eventually you will get there. It's someone was saying 1% better, get 1% better, and eventually you'll get to 100% and even more. So yeah, great advice.
Yeah, I love that. It's just like the snowball effect, and then it turns into a domino effect to encourage others to do so. So I think, yeah, that's a really great tip of advice, because just psychologically speaking, like just ingrained in us, the brain likes small chunks rather than big things, because it can easily overwhelm us. So it's a good point you bring up. Even just with our own mental health, it's good to start small, because small things are really the biggest things at the end of the day, and it adds up. So it's a great takeaway.
Yeah, and it's also easier to process, easier to accomplish when you start small too. So when you say you're trying to go for a run, don't try to run 10 miles right away. Start small.
No, you're gonna exhaust yourself. You're like, I give up. It's not for me.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I hope people will use that to their advantage, because starting small is probably the best way to approach things. Yeah.
I think it's easier said than done, obviously. And I think a lot of times people want to give tips of how to better yourself. And it's really your brain probably will be overwhelmed by looking at a tip book. And I'm, I've been there. It's I'm looking at a tip book and I'm okay, I'm going to try to do all these things in a matter of a week. And it's no, I maybe accomplished one. And that's just the reality of things. And I think people need to show the reality of, these type of issues, rather than, again, just making this perfect picture. And I think it really does, create that impact even on social media. You're only seeing what mental health advocates are doing with when they're having a good day. It's you've got to show the bad, because literally if you're I had a discussion with someone and they were saying, wow, you really are taking all the chances you have with COVID and you're really thriving. And I'm I just had a breakdown yesterday, and it's so real of just having those days and having even those weeks and months. And it's this is a real thing, and it's people need to share it, so it's just normal. It's not that it should be how to explain it, it's not it's a good thing to have horrible days all the time, but again, normalize having those bad days, because I think we're also stuck in making sure that we are just having the best day every day, and the negative is just horrible, you don't even want to talk about it. And that's where we've come to, where it's this extreme of only good, you don't talk about any bad, because if you show bad, it's wow, you're really negative as a person. And it's like, no, you're just showing really like what, life is really about, and
Yeah.
we're trying to break those barriers that, our generations before didn't. And it's like, that's literally a big enough step just for even saying, I have ADHD or I have bipolar disorder. It's like, it's such a big step to just say that. And it's like, I don't even think people understand that impact for just accepting it for yourself and just saying it. Like, that is such a big impact that people people really don't think about how tiny the little steps you make is really going to do something.
Yeah, 100% on the
Powerful.
whole. Yes,
Yeah.
very powerful. And I
Yeah.
completely agree with showing the bad with the good, because
Yeah.
you need to show that, life isn't just going to be good, good, good. There's always going to be bad. Everything's relative. And I think it's so important that people open up about that, because we're so inundated with the highlights. And I think that's what causes a lot of depression amongst people too. So I
Yeah.
think I think just being transparent about yourself and what you're going through is just so important. And yeah, you 100%, I completely agree with that statement.
Yes,
Yes.
you bring up a very big point about like it falls a line into like toxic positivity versus genuine optimism. I think the toxic positivity thing is about, only focusing on the good. I should be thankful for what I have and not like I should just ignore the negative, when really that's unrealistic and impractical, because it's like, well, life is the good and the bad. It's the yin of the yang, yang of the yin. And so you can't not take into consideration the other in order to experience the depth of how happiness can feel like. And versus genuine optimism, it's just gonna it's about like um, you know um, I focus on the positive. However, I will not shun those negative experiences. In fact, when I do have these negative experiences and these bad days, to be truly positive about it is to know that it's temporary and it's not going to last. I will feel how I feel right now, but that shouldn't, like, knowing that it'll be better shouldn't mitigate the negative experiences, because that builds character.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
self-care isn't just about bubble bath and face mask, and I will have my candles and everything. It's also about having those breakdowns at 3 a.m. and you're gonna feel better. So yeah, love the transparency. It's true. It's very true.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to let it all out in
Yeah.
order to get better. And yeah, definitely, Kat. Yeah, I agree with that too, because when I've gone through different breakdowns, it's kind of also a cathartic experience as well. So sometimes you have to just go through it all
Yeah.
and go through all the motions of being sad, being depressed, and try not to suppress it, because everyone usually tries to suppress it or ignore it. And I think that you kind of have to just let it all out, just process it. And like Kat was saying, everything is temporary. So knowing that will help you. So thank you, Christine, for taking the time to speak with us today. I hope everyone that's watching has gained some invaluable information from this. There's so much to learn about mental illness and mental health, that I think that, conversations need to be, the dialogue needs to be continued. So with that, take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and hope to see you at the next interview. Thank you.